What do you think the most useful advantage is in combat? While size and numbers do matter, the thing that usually tips the scales is the element of surprise. The one who lands the first blow is often the victor. Those who master stealth can overcome the stronger foe, to the point where they can carve out territory of their own. For there is no such thing as dirty tactics when it comes to nature. There is a species of dragon that has mastered such a strategy, to the point where most secluded and darkened places house them exclusively. I speak of the Nightsnaggers, the boogeymen of children's stories, and despite what people will tell you, are a very real creature to be feared. They are the very definition of skulkers in the shadows, being that they are naturally nocturnal species and keeping to the dark. This has resulted in them being rarely seen despite how widespread they are throughout the continent. Some are even capable of turning invisible, making them even more elusive. Of course, fear is a tactic in survival, and Nightsnaggers know how to wield it well. For some of the largest dragon species, ones easily dwarfing them in size, still flee their lands for this very reason, as Nightsnaggers hiss and click throughout the night, akin to serpents, to warn those stepping into their domain, with some of the wisest creatures fleeing when they hear such noises. Despite mostly being found throughout the Neodor range, they have a reputation for being swamp dragons, due to the fact that few of them can be found within these very swamps of the land. And you will find that most swamps do tend to have at least one clade of these beasts, but it would be more accurate to call them underground dragons, as they mostly live in underground caves, tombs, and ruins. In fact, it's quite common for a clade of Nightsnaggers to be living underground beneath the domain of another dragon, and most of them are okay with this agreement, as they don't really care about the domains of others, and they both stop invasive species that would want both domains. But don't view this as an alliance of sorts. It's more of just a natural convenience that tends to happen quite often. They are classed as wyverns, given that they have one pair of bat-like wings and one small thin pair of two-clawed legs. Their wings have small claws on the tips of them, helping to climb the walls of caves, and their faces are quite long and pointy, with an odd spike that tends to dart out every now and again. They have two large frills on the sides of their head that are used to threaten things. They have 3 rows of spikes along their back, with the middle one being quite long and large. The tips of their tails are heavily covered in spikes, resembling a natural mace of sorts. Their bat-like wings can slowly regenerate over time, which is convenient, as they are quite fragile and rip easily. In fact, you will find most of them have holes in their wings through no real fault of their own because of this. Their colours denote their clade, and tend to match their underground environment, with quite dark and muted colours, but given how long ago Nightsnaggers were being ridden and bred, there are some interesting patterns that have been developed, with some even having mystical and symbolic patterns that have been seen on them. They live in small wolf-like packs, but often split up to be alone when they hunt, returning to their nests by the end of the day. They even help and care for damaged and weakened members of their packs, as well as look after the newborns together, even if they have no relation. But outside of their pack, they hold no loyalties, resulting in packs of the same clade, sometimes fighting for domain. But this rarely results in any deaths, more to show who's the most dominant of the land. Of course, some members swap from pack to pack for all sorts of reasons. In fact, some might even use other dragon species as a tactic to beat out another pack of their clade, but this rarely works as intended, and sometimes results in the invaders fully taking over for a time. But Nightsnaggers are patient beasts, and if a clade is truly on its last legs, they will start to band together over time, and retake the lands that are just perfect for them, eventually casting out their invaders, and then slowly splitting off into their own packs again. Despite how elusive and hidden they are, it's not that hard to acquire one as a mount. Well, they're a dragon, so it's very hard to acquire one as a mount, but by dragon standards, it's not that hard of a task. See, they have a sort of sense and respect for authority in a bizarre way. It's not that hard to get them to see you as a higher up in their pack. And also, given how long ago they were tamed, most tribal societies are willing to sell them, or possibly an egg. Of course, there is one group that is famed for riding them, and they are as elusive as the beasts themselves. I speak of the Acolytes, or Phantoms as most know them, for they view these beasts as sacred because their predecessors were the first to tame them, and they keep them as their favorites for obvious reasons. Hunting them can be a daunting task, as finding them's going to be the hard part, and they will likely find you first. But if you are lucky enough to not be surprised by them, they do have a glaring weakness, as I have previously mentioned. Their wings are easy to rip, and most weapons should be up to the task, making it harder for them to use their hit-and-run tactics. Though, this advice is only really useful if you survive the first hit, something most of their prey doesn't get to do. Shall we get to the fun part? The part where I discuss the unique ones, the ones with legends and myths behind them, the ones with entire societies that worship them as divine beings, the ones that most know to fear, for they have legends of their own. Then I shall tell you of them, starting with the ones that live in the famed Phantom Temples. Found deep within the Skultar Temple, and one who is famed to be able to wipe locations off the map, is Nogir, the Crimson Death. Heavily scaled along his body to the point where they almost look like feathers and a large fin for a tail. He is a monster that dwells in his pitch-black cave within the temple, only ever leaving when the Phantoms use a mystical call known as the Skaltar Aria to summon him. But take heed, those who would want his assistance, for it is said that those who use the call are doomed and cursed to relive their victims' last moments again and again, and he takes the souls of those he kills. Another who lives in one of these temples and was the mount of the very Neodor hermits themselves. Found deep within Halgin Temple is Venfir, the Bristled Dread, with 2 large horns instead of the usual frills and a cluster of spikes along his body, with his tail being more meaty and chunker than spiky. He is an angry and vengeful beast. He survived the Eventide as he was in a great slumber as it happened, only for him to wake up to find his home sacked and destroyed. The family he cared for dead before him. He let out a vengeful roar that is said to still cause avalanches to this day. It took a while for the Phantoms to calm him down, for him to be a usable state, but they still use his rage in combat, as you would be a fool to deny his power. The last of the Temple Guardians is found within Skalavig, and is said to be sent by the sun god Mjor himself. I speak of Lofnir, the Forged Wraith, with the head horns instead of frills that are coated in jewelry, and spikes that dart all along his wings, and a mace-like tail that is around the base rather than an extended joint. Legend says the gods sent him to keep the secrets of forging and to guide humans in this task. He's the only reason the temple stands to this day, as during the Eventide he fended off the raiders alone. He guards the mostly abandoned forge in the Skalavig Temple, warming its fires endlessly, only letting the occasional phantom use it if he thinks they are worthy. He's also where the myth of dragons hoarding treasure comes from, as it is surrounded by treasure beyond your wildest beliefs. There is a tragic one, whose temple was never reclaimed by the phantoms, as it rests only in ruin. The one that dwells in the catacombs and crypts is Druldir, the Silvered Shade, with sensory front-face joints and scaled spikes shooting out of his whole body, with long wing joints and a forked tail. He has been driven mad due to years of isolation. During the Eventide, he fought valiantly to protect his home, but was no match alone, and fell, only to be collapsed under the rubble and ruined. It took decades before he could even free himself and fly again. He speaks and sometimes strikes at people only he seems to be able to see, as his mind has been fractured over the years. Luckily, a smaller cult of phantoms has found him, and are trying to help him. His body has healed, but his mind shall remain ever broken. there is one more who has absolutely no link to the phantoms, and may in fact be the oldest living of their kind. Far, far to the north, hopefully where he will stay, is Hrall, the Shadow Drifter, with massive horns instead of frills, and a crest that runs along his head and back instead of the larger spikes, external rib bones, and fins on his tail. He is unseen, and little is known about him. A true monster who is said to be the bringer of the end times. An uncatchable, uncontrollable, and unstoppable beast. All of this is according to legends, though. Perhaps I should end the stories there before things get even darker. But then again, these beasts might like it that way. The dwellers that they are in shadow and myth. But they're actually surprisingly cute when they have accepted you. I would know, as I have one. However, mine's a bit special, as I think he's got a condition of sorts, as despite being a few years old now, he remains ever a hatchling in size and stature. I bought him as an egg off the phantoms. I had to give them an ancient warhammer for it, but if you ask me, I think he was worth it. He's a bit of a troublemaker, actually, as he tends to... Oh no, oh, he's stealing a drink right now, actually. I should go stop him before I get into trouble. We'll have to end this conversation here, I'm afraid. Thank you for stopping by. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really, really mean a lot to me. But till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day!